Okay, wow, it's day 32 in this playlist. So if you just tuned in to the series, I encourage you to go back to the beginning, listen to day 1, and begin the journey through the book of John there. Today we're looking at chapter 10, verses 1 through 21. These are just amazing verses. Let me read it for you. Truly, truly, I say to you, this is Jesus speaking. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, and they do not know the voice of strangers. This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So Jesus again said to them, Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and I will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and is not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I might take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father. There was again a division among the Jews because of these words. Many of them said, He has a demon, he is insane. Why listen to him? Others said, These are not the words of one who is oppressed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? Okay, lots here. Great stuff. Real important stuff. And I was reading through a commentary written by R.C. Sproul on the book of John. And the way he explained these verses here that we're looking at today, just really good, just the way he put it. So I'm pretty much going to be using that material here to explain what we just read. I think it's just really good. So here we go. This is R.C. Sproul that I'm quoting. He says, Jesus began with contrasts. And the first contrast was between the one who enters the door of the sheepfold and those who climb over the fences and try to sneak into the sheepfold by some other way. Those who try to sneak in are thieves and robbers, Jesus said. But the shepherd uses the door. Jesus addressed those whom God had called to be shepherds over his flock, the clergy of his day, or we might say the priests or the pastors of his day, who had so recently cast the healed man out of the synagogue, rejecting a sheep in the flock of God. Jesus calls these clergy, the Pharisees, thieves and robbers. Jesus drew this illustration from the sheep industry of the day. The way sheep were cared for in ancient Israel was very different from the way they're handled today. In those days, there was one large central pen or sheepfold in a given community. And at the end of the day, people brought their small individual flocks and led them into the big sheepfold. With their combined resources, they paid a gatekeeper, and it was his job to stay with the sheep during the night. In the morning, the gatekeeper opened the gate to those who were truly shepherds, whose sheep were enclosed in the sheepfold. The shepherds entered by the door, for they had every right to do so. The sheep were theirs, and the gatekeeper was a paid servant. When a shepherd entered the sheepfold, the sheep of all the local flocks were mixed. But he began to call, and his sheep recognized his voice and came to him. In fact, a good shepherd was so intimately involved with the care and nurture of his sheep that he had names for them, and he would call them by name. His sheep followed him out because they knew him. Jesus used this particular illustration over and over again to speak about his relationship to those whom the Father had given him, to those who are believers. The illustration teaches us that Christ knows the believer, and the believer knows him, recognizes his voice, and follows him. Obviously, in terms of the illustration, the gatekeeper, who opens the door of the sheepfold to the shepherd, represents the Father, who opens the gates of heaven to Christ and lets him bring his sheep into the safety of the fold. That's amazing. Jesus is the shepherd. And he knows all of his sheep. He knows all of his believers, or followers, you might say, who truly are following him. He's in relationship with them, like these sheep are in a way in relationship with their shepherd. They hear his voice and they come to him. Let's go on to the next portion. He said, when he has brought out all his own, these are the verses beginning verse 4. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. Well, there's nothing new about that, is there? But let's listen back to what Sproul said in his commentary, which I thought was very good. He says, today, sheep are herded, usually by dogs that drive them and keep them from going where the shepherd wants them to go. However, in ancient Israel, sheep were led. The shepherd went ahead of them, and where the shepherd went, the sheep followed. They didn't simply roam all over. They followed the shepherd. The shepherd was their leader, and if one sheep began to stray, the shepherd would simply call it. The sheep knew his voice and followed him, but they did not follow a stranger. Again, it's a beautiful picture, I can say, as a believer, as a follower of Jesus, as a sheep. By the way, sheep are some of the dumbest animals on the planet. Don't be insulted by this. I'm not, because sometimes I do some really dumb things, especially when it comes to the things of God. But anyway, when I stray, he does call. I don't hear an audible voice. I don't see a visible Jesus. But his spirit works in my heart and convicts me that I'm straying. And through that, I'm called back to the fold. And he always comes and gets me, thankfully. Verse 7 through 10, let me read those. So Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers. Remember, he was talking about the Pharisees and Jewish leaders of that time. He said, he essentially was saying they were not good shepherds at all. They were terrible. Thieves and robbers. He says, all who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. So first Jesus said earlier in these verses that he was the shepherd to whom the gatekeeper opened the door. Here he said, I'm not only the shepherd who leads the sheep in and out of the sheepfold, I am the door that they go through. His meaning becomes clear in the following words. It is through him that salvation is found. Salvation from what? Salvation from sin. Salvation from not being connected to God, to not having a relationship with God. And the consequences of that at death are terrible. So it is through him that salvation is found. Those who come to him, that is Jesus, the Good Shepherd, find access to life and sustenance. Others have promised these things, but they were thieves intent on only stealing, killing, and destroying. In other words, they wanted to profit from the sheep and then dispose of them. But Jesus came not to steal, but to give his life. And his gift is abundant life for us. This picture of the sheep going in and out and find pasture. You probably have heard of Psalm 23. It's so famous. Even those who don't know anything about the Bible have heard it. They've heard it on TV. They've heard it at funerals, so on and so forth. And there is this picture there that the psalmist, the one who writes the psalm, is talking about. Finding, laying down in areas that are watered, and just this picture of life and safety. We sheep need safety. That is for sure. Let me go on. Verse 11 through 15. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Now, I'm interrupting the verses here, but this laying down of his life, we haven't seen that yet in the book of John. And it's tempting for me to, skip to the end so you can see all of what Jesus does for the sheep. And we can't do that here, but you're getting a snippet of it, this laying down his life. He is literally going to lay down his life. It's not just for this part of his teaching. Verse 12, he who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he's a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Here Jesus contrasted himself not with the thief and the robber, but with the hireling. Sometimes people took care of their own sheep, but sometimes they were too busy with other things, so they hired others to look after their sheep. But since tending the sheep was just a job for the hireling, the sheep usually did not receive the same kind of tender care they received from their true shepherd. We would understand that. When the master of a flock is tending his own sheep and a wolf threatens, he stands in the gap and uses his rod to beat off the attack. If necessary, he lays down his life for his sheep, for they are not his. Not so with the hireling. He doesn't own the sheep. So if he sees a wolf coming, he takes off. He thinks, my life is worth more to me than these sheep. Let the wolves have them. But the true shepherd, the good shepherd, does not think that way. Last couple of verses. Verse 16 through 18. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. What he was talking about here was the expansion of the gospel beyond the borders of Israel to the world of the Gentiles. What are the Gentiles? First of all, Jesus is a Jew. All of these people that he's been dealing with here are Jews, Jewish leaders, religious leaders, just Jewish people. And Jesus comes into the world to fulfill a promise made all the way back to Abraham 2,000 years earlier. So we're not going to see this in the rest of the book of John. We would have to look in other books in the Bible to get the teaching on this. But many of the Jews, as we're already seeing here, rejected Jesus, rejected this good news, what we call the gospel. And at some point, God told one of his apostles, or a couple of his apostles, to go to the Gentiles. Now take the message to the Gentiles. And the Gentiles are simply everyone who's not a Jew. So there's the Jews, and then there's everybody else. There's the Jews, and then what the Bible calls the Gentiles. So let me go on. Jesus was prophesying that he would bring from the Gentiles those whom the Father had given to him. Just other sheep that aren't Jewish sheep. They're Gentile sheep. And there would be one sheepfold. They would all be in one place, Jew and Gentile, in the church that the Good Shepherd would build. Verse 17 and 18. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father. By the end of this book of John, we'll see how Jesus laid down his life for the sheep. But it's important for us to remember that these men had no power over Jesus. And even though they wanted to kill him right now, it could not happen until the appointed time that God had established. Jesus willfully came into this world to gather his sheep, and willfully will die for them. This is the shepherd that we all need. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.